Goku versus Featherine is a topic that many people claim to be one-sided and a stomp, and is such a nonsensical discussion because Goku can easily piece up Featherine in a fight. But I am here to tell you all that Goku does not beat Featherine, and that he actually gets completely destroyed no matter how you try to scale him. And in today's video, I'm going to prove just that. I'll also let you all know right now that I'm specifically talking about Dragon Ball Super Goku and not Heroes, because that's an entirely different discussion. And many people mostly talk about Super Goku beating Featherine, which is just simply not the case. And I'll be explaining why this is the honest truth. To start this battle off, I'll be going over all of Goku's regular scaling and prove why he isn't strong enough to beat Featherine. All the way back during the Battle of Gods arc, Goku and Beerus were clashing so violently that they were sending shockwaves all throughout the universe that were so powerful that it would have destroyed the entire Universe 7 macrocosm. In the anime, it was stated multiple times that Goku and Beerus' clash would have destroyed the entire universe, and it is also stated in the super manga as well. And the universe-destroying shockwaves were even reaching the Kaioshin realm, which is a completely separate realm cut off from the rest of the macrocosm itself. The macrocosm is able to house multiple universe-sized constructs, and even have some of these constructs being said and shown to be infinite in size, like the living world, otherworld, heaven, hell, and even the demon realm. Hell being stated to be even bigger than heaven, meaning hell is at the very least infinitely bigger than heaven, and the demon realm not only being stated to be a separate dimension, but also essentially a mirror of the living world. And the living world is said to not only be infinite in size, but also be infinitely expanding multiple times as well. And Goku and Beerus were going to destroy all of this. This amount of power then becomes Goku's base, and with the stacking of his multipliers and various Zenkai boosts he gets during the series, he is already unquantifiably stronger than he was when he performed this feat, meaning that this feat, depending on how you interpret it and how you scale some of the cosmology, it can be at the lowest around universal, all the way to low multi if you believe things like the afterlife is actually 4D, and Goku being able to perceive it even while living and also threaten to destroy it can put Goku at around low multi. Goku then has another impressive feat during the Tournament of Power, and within this tournament, after Goku survives his Universe 7 Spirit Bomb, he awakens and his mere presence causes the entire World of Void to actually shake. The World of Void being stated to be infinite nothingness and is devoid of space and time. And so, to reiterate, Goku has universal to low multiversal AP, depending on how you scale him, and can also output infinite 4D levels of power because of this feat of almost destroying an infinite 4D macrocosm. He could also be scaled to 5D if you believe to upscale the cosmology a little bit more. I personally am kind of iffy on it. If you think he's 5D, it doesn't really matter for this video, go for it, but he's at least infinite 4D in my opinion. And with that being said, let's go over his speed and see how fast Goku actually is. Now when it comes to Goku's speed, you can either scale him to infinite speed, immeasurable speed, or inaccessible speed. And firstly, I'll go over infinite speed. During the Granola arc, when Goku and Vegeta was first battling against Granola, he was able to teleport and dodge out of the way of one of Goku's attacks, and Goku notes that the technique that Granola is using is similar to instant transmission, but is even faster than that, which means that Granola is using a technique that is at the very least infinite speed, and because it is unquantifiably faster than instant transmission, but they are still within Universe 7, this would make this feat an infinite speed feat. And Goku, Granola, and Vegeta all cliff these versions of themselves throughout the rest of the arc, which means that you can comfortably place them here as a low ball. And later when Granola and Gas are fighting, Gas is also using this technique, and Granola is able to attack Gas while he is still in the middle of teleporting back to the ground, which again helps solidify them being around this tier and cliffing the versions of themselves that I'm mentioning previously, as he is able to react to his instantaneous teleportation. And as for Goku's immeasurable speed scaling, you can scale Goku off of Hit's time skip. Hit's time skip has been said in both the anime and manga to be able to stop time itself, and Goku was able to move out of Hit's time skip through sheer power alone, which would make Goku immeasurable speed. And Jiren, someone who at the time was stronger than Goku, was able to resist and negates Hit's time skip as well, with Vados in the anime stating that Jiren surpasses time itself. Now, many people believe that she is saying that he actually surpasses time, as in like his existence, but this is not true. Vados is simply saying that Jiren's raw power is what surpasses time and not his existence. We know this because Jiren is still bounded by aging, needing things like rest, sleep, etc. So again, Vados is only talking about his raw power, which makes sense with context of the story, and not his existence. And lastly is for inaccessible speed. And this is really, if you want to take this at face value, or if you want to wank Goku to absurdity, it really doesn't matter. You do what you got to do. But after Zeno destroyed Future Trunks' timeline, Zeno is seen floating around aimlessly in pretty much a white void. And Goku was able to get out of the time machine and physically move around in this empty space, which, as I said before, is the void of time, since he literally destroyed the timeline. Again, if you want to take this at face value and use this, by all means, go for it. I'm just bringing it up for people that don't know, and that's a possible way to scale Goku. And with his speed covered, let's get into his hacks and abilities. The only notable hacks and abilities that are worth talking about, especially during this matchup, is Goku's Super Saiyan transformations, which, as you all know, are 50 times, 100 times, and 400 times amp respectively for Goku's first 3 Super Saiyan transformations. And when getting into his God transformations, they are unquantifiable amps, but we all know that they are at the very least amps that are greater than, let's say, a Potara fusion level amp, with Goku thinking that Vegeta wouldn't be enough to handle Beerus, and this is post Buu Saga, but then when he's in Super Saiyan God, he can actually contend with and fight Beerus. So at the very least, the multiplier should be greater than that of Vegeta. And Goku having access to Hakai, which in the manga he's able to use to actually existence erase people. And yeah, that's about it. So now that I've talked about Goku, it's time to go over Featherine and explain why Goku just simply cannot defeat her. Now, in order for me to go over Featherine, I must talk about the Yumi Neko Cosmology, as just like Goku, this is an important part of her scaling that needs to be addressed. To start, the human domain is stated to have its own hierarchy, and just like the witch's domain, each structure of said hierarchy transcends the previous one. This is further supported with Alice stating that there are not only higher worlds or layers within the cosmology, but are also connected by a hierarchical relationship, meaning that the most furthest layer at the bottom is dimensionally lower than the layers at the top, which means that each layer as you go up gets higher and higher in dimensionality. I have a simplified version of the cosmology's layers on screen, but in order to really explain how strong Featherine is, I'll have to go over each layer and give explanations about them. So for the first layer, we have the 3D layer, and this is the human domain, which is just your average human realm or normal realm, like our world. But the human domain can be meddled with and controlled by the people of the above layer. The next layer is the 4D layer, and you can kind of argue that this is the state of Rokkenjima when it became part of Beatrice's cat box, and having things such as science and magic both coexisting, which normally should be impossible, which is why it is transcendent of the 3D layer. The next layer is the 5D layer, and this layer is something that can be crossed over to and is said to be the quote-unquote present world. Next is the 6D layer, and this layer is one of the many higher narrative dimensions. Next is the 7D layer, and this layer is the magic world. This layer and the human world are said by Beatrice to be two sides of the same coin, and Erica calls this layer a parallel world and describes it as a meta-like space, which would make it transcendent of the previous layer because the layer I'm talking about now is a meta-narrative space, which again transcends that. Next is the 8D layer, and this is the underside of the game board, specifically of Beatrice's cat box, and this layer is stated to be endlessly silent and be the border between the human world and the other. It is also above the previous layer because it is said to be nowhere in the world and existed at no time in the world, and how every single place leads to here, but nothing could be reached from this layer. Next is the witch's domain, and here we enter the 9D layer of purgatory or the meta room, whichever you want to call it. In this layer, it is above the human domain, where the higher beings such as witches are able to view the human domain as a game board, and is where they play their games. Next is the 10D layer, and this layer is above the previous ones, and Battler and Genji head into this higher layer to talk about Chick Beto. Next is the 11D layer, and this is the golden land of Maria and Beatrice, or the Mirage Sorcerer. I probably mispronounced that, I'm so sorry. And this golden land is outside of the game board, and was also stated to be the most impenetrable realm within the territory. Next is the 12D layer, and this is the sea of fragments within Beatrice's cat box. It is able to exist within Beatrice's cat box, but is below the boundaries of it. And when Battler enters this sea of fragments, he describes it as a pitch black universe and said that the space was filled with endless darkness in every direction, and how it felt like an infinite expanse with countless glittering objects. Next is the 13D layer, and this layer is actually the Game Master's existence. The Game Master is able to create their own game boards and control all of the pieces on the board, which obviously means that they transcend it. And because things like the truth or deductive reasoning and other mental capabilities are equated in the meta world to be said and shown to be raw power, and because Battler was able to know and reach the absolute truth of Beatrice's game, this makes him exist on a higher plane than the previous ones that I just mentioned before. Next is the 14D layer, and this layer is Burn's Chapel. At the end of episode 6, Featherine asks Burn Castle to uncover the last truth of Beatrice's witch illusion, and allows Burn to be the Game Master to do so. With Burn as the Game Master, she creates a chapel, and this chapel, or cat boxes I should say, is much bigger than Beatrice's and covers pretty much her entire territory. And Burn was able to cut off the cat box in a maelstrom of compressed time, as stated by Willard. As I said, making this higher than the previous layer. Next is the 15D layer, and this layer is the sea of fragments of Burn's cat box. As I said before, because Burn's cat box is just way bigger than Beatrice's, and it encompasses her cat box, her sea of fragments is also much bigger as well. And when Lion is trying to leave the theater of the witches of theater going, the outside of it is said to be like an ocean of stars, and Lion feels as though they're not even running, but actually free falling instead. Next is the 16D layer, and this layer is Heaven. Now, the reason why this layer is above the previous ones is because Willard was stated to be on a higher plane of existence, with the visual novel saying the plane of existence he was on was just a different level. And when Willard was talking to Lion, he says that it doesn't feel like he's talking to a piece from a lower plane of existence, and the reason for this is because Lion was Willard's Watson, so they aren't your normal piece on the game board. Now, there are more layers, but the problem is that they aren't normal quantifiable ones. And while they go on infinitely, I'm sure you all understand just how strong Featherine is. She was said to be the strongest witch and has reached the absolute pinnacle of being a witch. So this just makes her completely transcendent of every single layer I just mentioned. She surpasses the entire cosmology, which should place her around the hyperversal to outerversal tier of power. And with her AP out of the way, let's talk about her speed. Now, because of Featherine's cosmological transcendence, you can just say that Featherine has a relevant speed because the concept of speed is just not applicable to her, and she just transcends it outright. Or if for some reason you don't think she has a relevant speed, then you could just say she has infinite, immeasurable, or inaccessible. Any of these are fine, really. It really doesn't matter, to be honest. And with the speed out of the way, let's talk about Featherine's hacks and abilities. Featherine's most notable abilities are her truths and ability to write and create narratives. Firstly, there is the red truth, and this truth is stated to be a conceptual weapon and attacks concepts themselves. It is said and shown to be impossible for the target to defend themselves at all. The concept of trying to use physical barriers or mental isolation and conceptual inheritance cannot work. Even things like blocking, dodging, or even persisting after said attack cannot happen either. It's also stated that it doesn't matter if the target is physical, mental, or conceptual, it'll just work regardless. Basically, the red truth is just the instant KO. Next is the blue truth, and this weapon is also a conceptual weapon, but instead of it denying concepts, it makes the target have self-doubt, and if great enough, can make the target pretty much deny and erase themselves. And something else to note is that with the blue truth, it actually is possible for the target to defend themselves. And the blue truth was said to be able to be used way more easily than the red truth. But because of Featherine and just how strong she is and how she transcends everybody in every layer of the verse, she really doesn't have this problem with the red truth and can actually use it just as well as the blue truth and etc. And she can also use golden truths as well, and even has cosmic awareness, which, as you know, grants her insane sensory capabilities. And now to talk about Featherine's most powerful ability, the power of the pen or power of the pencil. This ability is insanely powerful, allowing Featherine to summon her pen and paper and lets her create and write whatever she wants and makes it a reality. Like, for example, in her fight with Lambda Delta, where she was actually really drunk, like she was super drunk during this fight. And she uses her pen and paper to write that Lambda Delta lost to her. And right after she writes that, Lambda Delta literally loses and dies against Featherine. And then she uses this ability again to revive her, basically allowing her to create narratives and fights where there are none to be had. And given how powerful she already is, it's safe to say that this can and will indeed work on almost any character she comes up against. And I'll also say this too, since I know people might bring it up, but Featherine really can't permanently be killed. It is said that meta beings, something which Featherine is as well, has the concept of death being absolutely meaningless to them. And the last thing I'd like to talk about for Featherine is the ability Endless 9. This ability denies the attacks of whatever the user doesn't acknowledge, and it bypasses any and all defenses, just like truths do. And Battler, someone who is at the very least comparable to Featherine, although on the lower end, is able to use this ability. And one of Featherine's avatars even notes that no one can interfere with Battler's story while he's using this. And with everything being laid out, it's time to answer the question of the video: who is stronger between Featherine and Goku? If you haven't been watching the video, the answer is Featherine, and it's extremely unfair. Featherine is infinite dimensional tiers above Goku, and her speed is more than likely just greater than his, with her being irrelevant speed, where the very concept of speed is just absolutely meaningless to her. While Goku, although not needing time to travel or move around, he still has to cross some finite distance to attack, while Featherine can just quite literally appear wherever she wants. And if that isn't enough, she has conceptual attacks, something that Goku has never dealt with in Dragon Ball Super, and not only attack on the conceptual level, but are also said to not be able to be conceptually defended against, meaning Ultra Instinct won't work against her as he can't dodge, trying to use instant transmission won't work, or even making key barriers won't save Goku from Featherine's onslaught. And she can also use Endless 9, which outright denies concepts and won't let Goku attack her if she doesn't acknowledge it. And even the Hakai, something that can existence erase beings, won't work on Featherine either. As in the Yumi Neko verse, there's a place called the Depths of Oblivion, or the Sea of Nothingness. And this place is said that if you lose your will, emotion, or form, you'll go into the depths of the sea. Featherine is able to lose her will, emotion, and form through being bored, and can die from being bored, and still be able to come back to life just by simply thinking or being unbored. The definition of existence erasure also qualifies for the example of what happens to people who enter the sea, meaning Featherine can survive having her form, emotions, and will completely destroyed if she so chooses. Featherine also has her army of Overlord cats, who are stated to be protagonists of their own stories, who Featherine made into her personal bodyguards, and are said to be from game boards that are higher than Beatrice's, which means that these cats are also extremely powerful, and there's little that I can see Goku doing to try and combat against them. Even if you try to wank Goku to outer versal and highball the Cosmology, give him infinite, immeasurable, inaccessible, hell, even give him irrelevant speed, it still wouldn't matter, since Goku lacks the hacks and abilities to take Featherine down. All in all, Goku loses, and I really do hope that people will stop saying Dragon Ball Super Goku can beat Featherine, because he just doesn't. It's blatantly just shown and obvious that he doesn't. And things like his Super Saiyan forms, techniques, or even Zenkai boost won't even help him close the immeasurable gap between them. And this is just the honest truth. I've actually been thinking about doing Xeno Goku versus Featherine, so if you would all like to see that video, then please leave a like, subscribe, and comment and help support this video as best as you all can. And if this video probably does good enough, I'll make the video for you all in the future. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can also check out Goku versus Vegeta, or Goku versus Saitama, or my Goku versus Yuha video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.